Welcome to the Sacred Birthwork and Business podcast, where sacred birthwork meets soul-aligned business. I'm your host, Anna Lundqvist, a former midwife, now sacred birthworker mentor, business coach, and the founder of Sacred Birth International. My intention with this podcast is to inspire you to follow your birthworker calling and to step fully into your power and purpose and unapologetically claim your place as the feminine leader that you were meant to be in your life and community. Let's reclaim sacred birthwork, let's reclaim sacred business, and let's do it the feminine way. Let's begin. This December, I have something very special for you. If you are wanting to become a birth worker, or maybe you're already a birth worker wanting to deepen your knowledge and skills, then I have an early bird offer, $1,000 off the Sacred Birth Worker Mentorship this December only. Come and join me and a global sisterhood of sacred birth workers as we are reclaiming ancient women's wisdom, combining it with modern knowledge, and weaving the new sacred earth birth rebellion. Come and join us. You can grab the early bird offer this December at sacredbirthinternational.com, and I hope to invite many of you into our beautiful international sisterhood. Hi, Victoria, and welcome to the Sacred Birthwork and Biz podcast. How are you?
You. I'm great. Yeah, I'm good. Thanks so much for having me.
So exciting to have you on. So you're actually you've been interviewed for the Natural Birth podcast with your birth stories, which were amazing, and that'll be aired as well on Sunday this week. And so, but then I also felt like I was so curious about your birthworker journey. I felt like you had so much wisdom, and I really wanted to have you on this podcast as well, sharing your like how you got into birthwork, how you became a doula, went on to studying midwifery, starting your birth business, and doing well in that as well. So, really wanting to hear all about it. So let's start at the beginning of like, what brought you into birth work? Were you called from an early age? Did you have a strong calling? Was it a whisper? Did you get nudged by life? Like, how did it happen for you?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. There really wasn't like a big special magical moment for me. I just was watching a TV show that had a birth in it. And I think I was 10. Something like that. It was Kyle XY, and I watched that show with my mom. And there was like an accident, like out in the middle of nowhere. And then the woman like goes into labor, and it's very like dramatic. And she gives birth like in the forest, right? Like where I think with the person who she got in a car accident with supported her. So, but I saw that show and I was like, oh my gosh, birth is so cool. I want to do this. Like I just saw a birth and then I was like, this is what I want to do. And it wasn't like you're on your back and like freaking out like most birth experiences that we see in TV. I think that she maybe was actually on her back, but something about her like not having access to all those interventions in hospitals, in the typical like movies that we see growing up. What I saw was this narrative where the woman is like screaming and begging for an epidural and in pain, and there's all these people, and it's like I was never interested or didn't like have any sort of inspiration come from seeing that kind of narrative. But seeing something outside of that system really sparked something in me. And even though it was still over dramatized for a TV show, I just felt like, oh, yeah, this is what I want to do. I did go to my sister's birth when I was 3.5, and I have some memories from that. And I think that also, it was a really sweet birth, and that left an imprint on me as well. When I was 13, I went to my first birth as a baby doula. So I started how old am I? I'm 30 now. So it was quite a while ago that I began. And there was, in our spiritual community, there was a woman who was a doula, and she was supporting another woman in our community who was pregnant. And they both knew that I was interested in birth work and allowed me to go to her birth. It was a 3-day birth. We got there, I would say, in early labor, and there was probably a positioning issue happening. And so I remember, yeah, it was 3 days. Like I kept asking, like, is the baby going to come anytime soon? And they kept saying, we don't know. Could be today, could be tomorrow. So it was my first experience of really like being in that place of unknown, being prepared for like I could be here for a few hours or I could be here for a few days. And yeah, it was a beautiful experience. I remember there were times where I wanted to comfort her and I had no idea how. So I was kind of more like this wide-eyed, like young girl, just witnessing, the beauty of everything, witnessing how the doula was supporting her. There was a moment when we first arrived at her house, and was sitting on the floor in her bedroom in front of her. And this was the first time I saw a woman like have a contraction in front of me as, a young person. And she was like sitting upright and then kind of rocked onto hands and knees and was moaning. And I remember being like shook by the power of like the rawness and seeing someone be so connected to their body and so primal. It was incredible. And I was hooked. I was like, this is what I will do. Um, yeah, that was really special. Bless her for having me there. I don't know how helpful I was, honestly. I think I was just kind of like watching, but that was really impactful for me. And I went to a doula training when I was 15. My parents drove me like across the state to do this like weekend intensive, and that was a DONA training. If you know anything about DONA trainings, I don't know what's going on with them now, but back then I definitely did not learn anything about advocacy, and there was an emphasis on not getting in the way of providers. And
I think
I
that
just knew,
still is very much their policy, hence why my training is not a part of the DONA certification because I do not agree with them at all.
yeah, yeah, I don't agree with that either. And it really set me up to be complicit to a lot of abuse going forward. And I had to figure that out on my own because the community of, people who were there to, I know, shrug,
Oh,
shake.
because I actually get like physically, I was like, I felt that up my spine, like almost
Yeah.
like this rage wave of like bloody beep, like here we have what's supposed to be the antidote or like the support or like the protector should, right? The doula should be. And absolutely there's some doula trainings out there that totally does that. But the biggest kind of known certification body, it enrages me even saying it now. Like I can feel the fire, just like it's so bloody wrong.
Yeah.
How it's just again then this female companion who will, in one sense, betray the woman.
Mhm.
Oh, sorry. I just felt myself being very activated by that.
It's super, super upsetting for sure. And I think a lot of people don't understand the difference between a doula who's trained independently and a doula who's trained through DONA, or a doula who's trained, or maybe not trained, but employed through the hospital, and how that really impacts their ability to be in integrity and actually serve you in the way that they're supposed to. I spent many years of my career being complicit to abuse and experienced a lot of consequences. And we're going to get into that, to all of that. And I think that's how I learned. But I remember being really confused and then going to, the community that I was a part of doulas to support each other. And there wasn't any like, you know, no one was, it wasn't clicking for anybody. Like we were all so brainwashed to believe that like our role is to hold a woman's hand while she's being abused by a provider.
Oh my
And
God, yes. Oh, thank you for saying this. Like, thank you for
yes.
saying this. Because this is something that I don't meet it often at clarity calls for the sacred birth worker mentorship, but it comes and women go like, so is this a certified training with Dona? And like, and I have to like explain this in the most gentle way, right? Of like not being all like fire and activated by it. But it's like, it's just so not understood. And also by women who employ doulas that only have this very limited scope.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the best things that we can teach doulas to do and support them with as they're preparing to take on this work is to help them find their integrity.
Mm.
And integrity is something that can't be defined by anyone else. It's something that only you can define for yourself. But if I had like instead of being told like this is how to be a good doula and these are the rules to follow and whatever, if I was supported in finding what my calling was and in like really getting clear on a deeper level of how my soul is, because this is a calling, it's soul work, how my
Mhm.
soul is wanting to show up in support of women, and to get like really clear on that like divine purpose behind it all, that would be like that's my integrity and that's my anchor, and that's how I know that I'm like moving forward in the right way. And it took so many like challenging experiences for me to finally like figure out what integrity was. And oh my gosh, like if someone had taught that to me from the beginning and helped me with that, it would have just been so different. So yeah, the first hospital birth that I went to when I was 15 was actually really incredible though. I, did the doula training, which basically taught me like positions, comfort tools, like just the really basic stuff. And I was like, I'm a doula. And there was a person at my high school who was pregnant, and we knew each other. We weren't really close, but I went up to her and it took a lot of confidence. And I was like, hey, I'm a doula. Do you want me to be at your birth? I'd be at your birth for free. I have to do like a few births to be certified. I actually never actually completed the certification. I think because it was just out of alignment. And whenever I tried, there were just these blocks. So I never became like a certified donut person. And I'm glad that I didn't. But she was like, yeah, sure, that sounds good. So I was her doula. She called me when her water broke. And I remember waking up at 3 in the morning to this phone call. And it was like, the birth, I was so excited, ran over to her house, and we're just kind of kicking it, waiting for labor to start. She was dating someone who wasn't really supportive. So I'm really glad that she had me. It ended up being like a really great experience for her to have some of that support that understood comfort tools for birth and was more present. So we get to the hospital and contractions start to like really pick up at that point. And so her mom, she was texting her mom. We were all just trying to like go to sleep. I was a friend and and we were like kind of lying on the hospital couch, and she was in the hospital bed. And then her mom texted me and was like, she's saying she was shy and I think had a hard time like asking for support. Um, and said like, I think she's feeling uncomfortable. Can you help her? And I was like, now's my time to shine. Just this like so excited. And yeah, we went through the night together, doing the hip squeeze. I asked for a birth ball, got her on the birth ball, and was like doing a lot of double hip squeeze, guiding her to breathe. She coped really well. We found a really great flow and it was beautiful, just her and I, while everyone else like slept. And at some point in the morning, she started feeling like, okay, this is a little too much and I want the epidural. And so she ended up getting the epidural pretty late into labor, which is great. And that's what her plan was. And yeah, I took a little nap and I woke up and she was ready to push. And I think a nurse checked her. She was 10. They called the doctor, and the doctor was stuck in traffic. So we were thinking wasn't going to make it. And the family at this point had really fallen in love with me, being there to support her. And they all said, like, Victoria wants to be a midwife. Like, this could be her catch. Like, can she catch the baby? And the mom was like, yes, like, I want you to catch the baby. And I was like, okay, I'll catch your baby. And I always cry when I talk about this story because it was so special. But I was like standing between her legs, and it's like the typical hospital birth, right, with the monitors and she's on her back. But it was very positive and it's what she was expecting and what she wanted. Um, and the nurse turned to me and she said, "Don't drop the baby." I was like, "Okay, I won't drop the baby." She like instilled a little bit of fear in me. I was like, "Don't worry, I'm not gonna drop this baby." But then I was sitting there like, "Okay, like I gotta catch this baby. I'm not gonna drop the baby." Because we know we're right at the edge of a hospital bed, so you can drop a baby, which is kind of strange the way that that works. So I was just standing there, like ready to catch this baby, and then the doctor like walks in probably 60 seconds before the baby comes out. And everyone's like, "Hey doc, she's catching the baby, by the way. We've already decided." And he was like, "Okay." He was very, very lovely. So he gowns up, he puts me in a gown and the baby starts to crown. So he said, "Put your hand right here." So he did a hands-off delivery, which is pretty cool. Like there was no hands-on manipulating the perineum, touching the perineum. We just had our hands open. So I had my hand open right in front of the baby's head, and the baby's head popped out, and it was very startling. I remember kind of being like, like withdraw my hands and put them back quickly, because it went from this little crown to like the head, popped so quick. And I have never seen like a baby actually come out of a vagina before. So maybe I did with the birth that I witnessed when I was 13, but I just don't remember. I don't have a memory of that. And I might have been looking at her. I'm not sure. I definitely wasn't between her legs. And so the whole baby came out into my hands, and the doctor's hands were below my hands. And we lifted the baby up. This is the part where I always cry when I tell the story. And I saw the mom's face, and it was so sweet to see this mom see her baby for the first time. And I was like holding her baby and passed the baby up to her. It was so special. And that just, it changed my whole life. I felt like a joy bomb fell on my life and it like broke me, the joy and the beauty of being present for a birth where the mom's like sovereignty and preferences were honored. Even in that model, it's what she wanted. And it was honestly the most positive experience in that model I think could be possible. For someone where everyone was just so kind and so loving. And there was this, it was a celebration of life. That's what that revealed to me, that experience revealed to me that the nature of birth is the sacred celebration of life. And I remember calling my mom in tears. "Mom, birth is amazing." And, so I was just so like, so hooked after that and really truly felt like, yes, like this is the path that I meant to be in. This is how I want to spend my life serving women and bringing their babies into the world. This is so beautiful. And then the next birth that I went to was the complete opposite. And this is where my training really failed me. It was a few years later, so I was in college, early in college, and I went to one more birth with a midwife in the hospital. That was a really lovely experience as well. And then the one after that was much more challenging. Where the mom, like her doctor went on vacation, so he wasn't there, and there was a new doctor that came in. There was a really like rushed sort of vibe going on where they just really wanted her on the Pitocin. They wanted it to go faster, and she had been already progressing like pretty quickly. They gave her an epidural. And then, they came in. I remember looking at the baby's heart rate on the monitor, and the monitor it was saying like 130s. I never saw it go below 120. It was pretty steadily in the 130s. And the doctor came in and took a quick look at the monitor and then was like, "Your baby's heart rate is down. We need to get the baby out. And we're doing forceps." Just gonna take a sip.
Wow, that's crazy. That's
Yeah.
perfectly normal. As if anyone's listening who's a birth worker, no, that's perfectly normal heart rate.
It is a perfectly normal heart rate. Yeah, especially for, she was 10 centimeters and ready to push, and baby was nice and low. And that's sometimes where they get squeezed a little more. And for baby's heart rate not going below 120 is great. Baby was doing really well. And maybe I missed something, but I remember looking at the monitor while the doctor was looking at the monitor and seeing the same numbers that they were seeing. And, I heard talk around like with the nurses, like we need to turn over the rooms. And there was just like this. this rushness to it. And I think that probably impacted that choice. Also, some doctors just really love to use forceps. They love instrumental deliveries and don't really have a lot of skill or expertise in being hands off or, waiting
Yeah.
by any means. So yeah, it was a really traumatic forceps delivery. The doctor like applied the forceps and, squatted back with all of her body weight and pulled, and it was really terrifying. She had this very like military, rough, like personality to her. And she just felt like a really uncomfortable person to have in the room when you have a baby. And the mom just let out this scream, and it felt like really like, yeah, like her power was being taken in a way. And, she was experiencing a lot of fear and didn't have like any sort of compassion or empathy, in this space. And
Yeah.
then they take the baby away immediately, and he was doing fine. And they took him to do weight and footprints and all this stuff before she could even see him. And I had no idea how to advocate. All I knew to do in that moment was to just like hold her hand and be there with her, while this was happening. And another piece to advocacy that I learned over time was that, we need some kind of awareness of our nervous system capacity to be able to advocate. And I definitely did not have a nervous system, the capacity to stand up to, against abuse. That felt really big, scary to me back then. So I just felt like even without the tools, like maybe my own knowing of what's right and wrong, I could like step up and say something, but I felt really blocked by this like terror, fear of the thought of, trying to interfere with something like that or stand up to a provider who was presenting themselves as the authority and presenting themselves as, yeah, someone who was like coming in to save the baby's life.
Yeah, I think this is so beautiful that you're sharing because I think this is actually very common. And first of all, just common for everyone to feel, even as, a midwife faced with someone in a white coat or authority, there's a power imbalance and you feel that and you just it's actually very subconscious, unconscious. And so it does take actually a lot of work on yourself and awareness, self-awareness, which is, I love that you're bringing this up because this is a huge focus in Sacred Birthworker Mentorship. We spend 2 months, 10 weeks, really delving into all the different aspects of ourselves, our voice, our throat chakra, our relationship to authority, our relationship to our intuition, like really listening to ourselves, being able to regulate our nervous system, how important it is to also check your own baggage, what you're coming with, your own births or your own rite of passage, maybe of just having your first bleed. What did that inform you of being a woman in the world, right? Your birth imprint, your maternal birthing lineage imprint, all of this actually affects how you show up in the birth room with birth advocacy, but also in space holding a woman in all her facets, being comfortable being with all of the things, all the beauty, but also all the like, chaos, the wild feminine, right? And so I love that you're mentioning this because this is sorely lacking, not just in the donor training, but like in midwifery. Like in most birth worker trainings, there's not an understanding of you needing to do yourself, like you're cultivating yourself to be the best space holder and birth advocate for women in this amazing, transformational, powerful, vulnerable, somewhat also chaotic, transition into motherhood.
Mhm, absolutely. That's beautiful. Yeah, and that's like the level of depth that I really believe is required to show up in integrity,
Yeah.
for each other. Yeah. Yeah, it can feel challenging sometimes if we have our own blocks around being able to be wild and vulnerable, being in those spaces of release and surrender, and also being able to hold that. And like when I described the first birth I went to, when the mom was like moaning, and I could really feel that power. It feels like a lot sometimes to hold when women are like really going like, whoa, like making these like big roaring sounds when they're birthing their baby. To be able to like hold yourself. And recognizing that as something that is like sacred and important, those big sounds.
Yeah.
That's huge. Yeah. Yeah.
When did you wake up to that your training maybe wasn't enough or that you needed to do more? Like, was it over several years or was it that at that birth or did, how long did it take until you decided to actually become midwife? Because now you're a student midwife. So tell us about that journey.
Yeah. After that, I took a little step back and I felt really lost. I couldn't find like this path to training that you're speaking of was what I had always wanted to find, but I didn't know that that's what I was looking for. I did more trainings, like trainings on loss, little things here and there. I did another recertification in 2017, also by Dona, but from a different person in Portland, and it was pretty much the same thing. So it didn't really give me much more, but it gave me a refresher, and I was feeling like I want to get back into birth work. I studied herbalism for many years. I love wellness, and I thought like maybe I'm gonna explore this. And it turns out that that is not very useful in the work that I do now. It's always been about birth. Yeah, so attending births just here and there, like a couple a year for a while, and doing those trainings is all I did until, let's see, I had my first daughter. And then after that, she was a year old, and I started feeling like I really am ready to pursue my career. I was a stay-at-home mom through COVID, and I was starting to feel like I'm ready for another thing. And I love birth so much, and I want to give that a go. And I did spend the next 2 years in the same kinds of patterns of being complicit to abuse. But this time, I thought it was different. I had to really learn it my way, the hard way. It was different because I was with a midwife who practiced so much. I mean, it was so much better compared to what I was seeing in the hospitals. So I really felt like this is the way, the sometimes like in the ways that she was more aggressive with people. I saw that in contrast to what I had seen before, and so it really wasn't flagging for me. But the truth was underneath it all that I was still choosing not to be in integrity. And I was choosing to abandon my own intuition. And, the consequences of that were that, I went through this 2 year, very intense. I was attending anywhere from 5 to 10 births a month, um, with a lot of hours, for free, working at the clinic without pay. And I didn't get credit for any of that. And that's the consequence that I experienced when I chose to leave. She chose not to sign my paperwork. So, do you want me to share that story?
Well, just briefly, like you just shared, I mean, that's, very interesting. How that is a theme for you. And I think the beauty in your story is that you're gifting something to women that I think this is actually quite common. And I think it's a beautiful theme to talk about that, that um, the good girl lives so deeply within us. Um, and to look to authority is just such a strong thing within our psyche. And so I love how generous you are with sharing these stories because I think they help women just to hear your story with that. Um, but I don't want to dwell too much on it. So let's dive on into, um, so you spent 2 years during COVID following her as an apprentice, is that correct?
Yeah.
And so what kind of, for anyone who's not in the States, what kind of model of midwifery is this that you're training in?
Yeah. So, I was training to be a certified professional midwife through NARM. And that is an apprenticeship path where you attend at least 50 births in 3 different phases with a preceptor. And the preceptor is the one who really decides like how you're doing, where your progress is. I would say 50 births is not enough in a medical capacity to be a midwife. And I don't know like if this happens for everyone, but I've heard that for many midwives, they don't just do that 50, but they do more. But it has to be, at least 50. There needs to be continuity of care, many, many, many prenatal and postpartum visits. I completed all of that and all of that paperwork. And the point of that was to train, midwives through apprenticeship, which means we're training the traditional ways of midwifery. But apparently, nurse midwives who practice a different model and other even physicians can sign off and can become preceptors. So that really does make it a little bit confusing for someone who's like wanting to take this path and learn this model. And then they're practicing and getting signatures from, providers who don't practice in that model. And so I was working with a nurse midwife who really did practice nurse midwifery, and she liked to talk up that she was so naturally minded, and in a lot of ways she was, but she also was like way more aggressive about a lot of things. And yeah, it started off kind of small, and I wasn't really noticing these pieces, but more towards the end, it started to become very clear when she was asking me to. One was take someone's blood pressure and document it as higher than it was so she could fire them from care. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. The next one was asking me to break someone's water while I was performing a membrane sweep. And I was also like, oh my God, no, I'm not going to do that. And there was so many other little things, little moments that led up to this. It was all really small, me kind of just being there while she was doing something to someone that they were saying like, no, I don't want you to do that, and she would do it anyway and say, this is for the safety of your baby. And she was, the authority. And not only it was like in this dynamic with her, I gave her so much power. She was my future employer because she said I could work at that birth center that she and I had really fundraised and like done all this work together to start. It began as a home birth practice for the first year, and was also my teacher. And I went through the numbers so quickly. I got the birth so quickly. You need to have 2 years of documented medical experience. And I needed just a few more months to get to that 2 years. So we were like, let's just put a pause on the signing. We're going to just wait until October comes and it's been 2 years, and then we'll just have a meeting and we'll just sign all the paperwork. And so I wasn't getting the signatures consistently. We were just going to wait. So it was kind of building. And then she asked me to do that membrane sweep and break the mom's water. And I was like, hell no. I'm going to quit. I quit. And then to punish me for quitting, she didn't sign the paperwork. And I got pregnant a couple months after that. And so I spent that pregnancy really working on my business. I had an online birth class that I created when my daughter was about 6 months old. So it was 5.5 years ago that I started my business. And I used to call it Birth Untethered. Now it's called Peaceful Birth Method. And, I on Birth Untethered, that still was the name. I just worked on expanding that birth class, rewriting it from all of my experience and knowledge that I gained, adding videos, things like that. And that was a really fun, beautiful project to do at home when I was pregnant. But I also, through that whole pregnancy, was fighting her, trying to get the signatures. And it was like a 9 month, long process. I found a great lawyer who supports midwives. And so was really skilled and understood exactly what was going on. And we brought that lawyer to NARM. And NARM, it's very common for midwives to be abused by preceptors in the US because NARM does not have any kind of pathway to protect students. So this is very, very common. Preceptors not signing paperwork because they want their students to give them more free labor or whatever it is. So a lot of midwife preceptors are really out of integrity and abusing students. It's a really big issue. I contacted NARM and I said, like, this is happening. Like, how can you protect me, with this? And they said, we don't have a process. We don't have a process. There's nothing we can do. And I really like drove it home with them. She was asking me to medically abuse people. Like I couldn't keep doing that. And they're like, okay, yeah, that sounds bad. But they still weren't really giving us a process. So the lawyer wrote them a letter and really pushed them. And they said, okay, we'll make a process for you. So NARM, the first time ever that NARM created a committee to address a student preceptor issue was with me and this midwife.
Yeah.
And it was like, a little fumbly. They were figuring it out and they apologized several times, like, we're were figuring it out how to do this, but they did a pretty good job. They just had midwives across the country that were, I think, all through like professional midwives that went through NARM to volunteer to be part of this committee. There was a big hearing between that midwife and I, and they eventually ruled in my favor and said that like this person, it was clear through all the evidence I submitted that she like deserves those signatures. And they asked the midwife to give me the signatures. And the midwife refused. And they said, if you refuse, like, we're not going to let you be a preceptor anymore. And there was, this kind of became like a multi-layered thing at the time. And I kept going into labor and then kind of going out of labor. There was this process where I was like two steps in, one step back. And I think it was because I was stressed, about what was going on dealing with all this legal stuff. So finally, I was 40 weeks pregnant and I woke up one morning and I sat on the bench and I watched the sunrise and I listened to this song my friend texted me, a medicine song that she learned. And I just listened to it and cried and cried and cried. And I had this spiritual experience where, for the first time, this is like bringing us back to when you asked that question, like, how did you figure it out? Like, find your integrity. This is where I found my integrity. I realized, like, why does this person have so much power over me? And why can't I just like release them? And then I realized that I have been choosing to give them that power this entire time, and I could always just walk away. And my nature is to like fight, fight, fight for what I believe is right. But that is not, often the right path. I wasn't listening to my soul. So I chose to really feel the presence of my soul and her wisdom. And I just felt I had this like full body connection with my soul. And it felt like, whoa, I have always had the choice to be free. I've always had the choice to find my integrity. And what that looks like to me is to walk away from this and be grateful for the lessons and recognize that the consequences were created by, my actions. And that's okay. And I need to learn midwifery from someone who practices in alignment with how I want to show up
Mm.
in the world and how I want to care for women.
Yes.
This person was not in alignment with that. So it was so beautiful. And then I went into labor 2 days later.
Brilliant. I love that. How beautiful and how important, for anyone listening, either if you are thinking about becoming a birth worker or you already are, like, are you actually practicing or are you gonna, take a training or have you taken a training that actually aligns with your soul? Have you done that or have you just ticked the box? Like, have you just done that training that just ticked that and you got a certification, Like, check in. And are you practicing the ways truly that you wish to practice birth work, whatever that looks like for you? I love this. This is so beautiful.
Yeah,
Wow.
thanks so much. Yeah, the model that we typically see of care is only focused on the physical. And, I think that for the people listening, they probably understand that women deserve more than that and that birth requires so much more than that. But we have to bring that to the culture ourselves and bring that to the work ourselves. And that's a choice. Often that's not going to be handed to us, not handed often to the woman who's pregnant, and often also not handed to the providers or the doulas that are wanting to practice. We need to all choose when preparing to be in that space to bring what it is that we want to create for birth work for the future generations to it. And so my experience was, me having to learn myself to be a way paver, right? Because there was no one around me that I connected with that was like, helping me see this. I had to figure it out myself, and I'm really grateful that I did. That felt like an initiation, truly for me, from my own soul. And now I realize, like, wow, this is my sole purpose. My sole purpose is to support families in creating opportunities for peaceful birth
Mhm.
and to help the world awaken to the sacredness of birth. And so, with that, driving me, I can now move forward in alignment because I can always be coming from that place deliberately. But I had to find that place for myself.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful that that's part of my story. I think it's a beautiful story, and there are no hard feelings towards that person anymore. I'm at complete peace with it, recognizing that, everything we experience in life is a co-creation, and I, made choices to contribute. And that midwife has really been one of my biggest and best teachers in this work in that way. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Ah, ringing so true. So you gave birth for the second time, and then at this point, so you were dabbling beforehand already in online birth work. So you were offering an online course. Um, what does your birth business look like at this point after that with your second babe? Yeah, what does it look like, your business?
Yeah. Oh, I just had the best postpartum with my second. So my husband and I are both entrepreneurs, and we're both self-employed. And he was working on another business with his dad that he had been working on for probably 5 years at this point. But he really didn't need to be doing it full time. And we decided to invest. We had some savings to like support us a little bit and to invest a little bit in, at the time, Birth Untethered. And he loves birth. He's like the perfect the perfect midwife's husband, honestly, birth worker's husband. He's such a great match for me. He loves birth so much. And we both together just chose to really put in a lot of time working on making that online course profitable with the baby. So we'd both take turns holding the baby, just hanging out at home and doing marketing work. And yeah, like basically trying to get the birth course into as many hands as we could, and also to get it to support our family. And to be honest, I never ever cracked that code. With selling a self-paced online course. And I'm glad that I didn't. I'm so glad I didn't, because that actually is also not the way that my soul wanted to like serve. But it's easier to make money and feel like you're doing good in the world, to just like, I mean, you are doing good in the world if you're like selling something that's really valuable, but that wasn't like the level, to just sell a self-paced online course on autopilot and not have any connection to the people that were buying it. And for the people, like online courses can be so valuable. And for people who have them, like good for you. And if it works, great. That's so great. Having something on autopilot is such a like wonderful thing. And it just for me it wasn't working because for me personally, that just wasn't the way that my soul wanted me to serve. And this is another way that I learned something the hard way, because I was choosing once again to like just work really hard and do it my way instead of like really following a more natural way where my soul was guiding me. But where my soul has been guiding me is to really show up in such a deeper way that requires me to be in integrity every single day, and requires me to connect to my soul every single day, to be on podcasts and speak my voice, to meet with clients one-on-one and do coaching packages and trainings and in-person classes. And so that is where I am today. But to back up, we, really wanted to like just be able to sell that course so that I didn't have to, on this deeper level, have to show up to that level. It is hard. I feel like entrepreneurship is inner growth on steroids.
Oh, yeah.
I've had to really like learn how to speak and to be okay with hearing my voice. And at that time, just recording a webinar and listening to myself was horrifying, like this is the way I sound. And it just felt like it had brought up trauma about my voice. And so, really, like the deep inner work
Yeah.
with trying to sell the online class began. And the online class now has evolved. It's free on my Peaceful Birth Academy. I've made it free, and it's evolved so much. And it's a beautiful offering from my soul that just really supports parents in feeling confident and prepared for birth. So basically what happened over time through my next pregnancy of like really trying to sell it, investing $30,000 in ads to try to get it to sell, we finally got a mini course to sell and to be profitable called the Tear-Free Birth Blueprint. So it was this like mini course that offered this 5-step process I created to support moms in reducing their risk for tears. And it was $27. And we were making about $5,000 a month from it right after my third baby was born, which was huge. We had like spent all of our money and we were down to like no money. And we didn't like this was our job. We both, my husband actually left his other business with his dad, and both of us were full-time working on now the peaceful birth method. And it all of a sudden, after 3 months of being profitable, it was like 2 years of working to get it profitable, stopped working because Meta changed their ad policy. And so you can't track for health, for people with health conditions. Meta can't like optimize ads, and pregnancy is a health condition. So the ads just tanked. And I'm so glad they did, because that was just like, compared to where I am now, just selling people this like self-paced course, it was just really, it wasn't inviting me to like do that deeper work and show up in the way that I felt called to show up. If that had continued to work, I would have kicked back and been like, cool, like I'm teaching a lot of people a really helpful method that's probably helping them have better births. And I don't have to like be involved. I can just kind of kick back and live my life. That's actually really not what I want to do. So
No.
where I am now, after that, I realized like I have to get on calls with people and have more clients. And I will say that during this time, I did have clients here and there who people reach out to me who want to do some one-on-one calls to guide them through some birth prep. There were some people who I did some like continuous support throughout the whole pregnancy, but it was very easy. These were people who came to me and were like, "Hey, like, can I work with you?" I was like, "Yes, totally. That sounds fun." So and I was teaching classes in my community, but that really didn't require me to have to step out of my comfort zone very much. And I remember even with the classes, I started teaching them probably 5 years ago. Whenever I would teach a class, I felt resistance going into it. Like, I don't want to do that. And then when I got to the class and I taught, I just left feeling so connected to my soul. And so now I'm at a place where I teach many classes. Every week I teach 2 different classes, and some weeks I teach a postpartum workshop too in my community. So I'm teaching like several times a week, and I have a coaching program. And there are 2 options. There's a group where we meet 2 times a week, and one on Wednesday, one on Saturday. And the parents come and I guide them through my method, the peaceful birth method, which is that method I created to support families in feeling confident and prepared for birth. So I give them more personalized support and help them make their birth plan. We all kind of learn from each other's questions. And then in the one-on-one package, they would work one-on-one with me weekly through their whole pregnancy, in addition to coming to the group. And then after baby comes for both of the packages, um, they can come to my postpartum call, and I can support them with intimacy after their baby is born. I have a whole framework for that. I can support them with breastfeeding, with taking care of their baby, taking care of their body. And the work is so much more of helping you like uncover the vision that you have for your family, overcome patterns, love yourself, and really show up and step up to be the kind of parent that you want to be, to model what you want to model for your child, through loving yourself, through asking for help, through setting boundaries. So a lot of the work that we do, it's not just like, here's the difference between continuous monitoring and intermittent monitoring. We'll have some of those conversations, but it's really, really deep work. And what's so beautiful and so fun about it, and what brings me so much joy doing this every day, is that it's all just this deep expression of love from my soul. And I love everyone that I serve so much and really invest in them. And the people who I attract to work with me, because I'm in that space, I find are also really committed to doing that work. And also because it costs money, and they're willing to invest, in that work. And so, I really like to support families in taking responsibility for their path and doing this inner work. And with the one-on-ones, we can go really deep into, releasing fear and building that nervous system capacity, uncovering patterns around like, why is it hard for me to ask for help? Why is it hard for me to set boundaries? And that really deep inner work is so life-changing, and beautiful to have those skills going into parenthood. And it's all created like the emotional support work is just like an outpouring of wisdom from my own healing journey,
Mhm.
which is just the most beautiful like reciprocity experience. Because for me personally, I feel like, I am an alchemist, someone who has taken the wounds and traumas and difficulties I've experienced in my life and turned those into gems, taken the wound and allowed the wound to become a portal for my soul to shine through and for me to learn and grow from. And all of my wounds still continue to be this source of so much healing and wisdom that I gain by, healing and supporting myself. And then I get to give that to other moms. So, where I am right now in terms of like the challenges that I'm experiencing in doing this work is with sales, finding the confidence and also the skill to ask for money, to put myself out there and be really vulnerable and say, like, here is what it is that I offer. This is my program. This is my framework. And will you join? It costs this much. And to not be like, oh, but I'll take less, or oh, but I'll, you know what I mean, which is my pattern to like say I want to say it's this price, but it's actually I'm okay taking this amount. I think that has created a lot of confusion in the universe. Like I keep putting out that I want this thing, but I actually am okay taking this, and I'm not being really like clear on what it is that I want. And I have some resistance for sure around really putting myself out there still. I used to be terrified of getting on calls. And what I've learned as like a businesswoman and an entrepreneur is that like whatever brings me the most joy and is the most enjoyable to do is almost always the highest leverage thing to do and the best thing to do. So if sales calls are making me feel so upset and I feel so resistant, probably I'm approaching it wrong. And I chose to invest in a coaching program with a woman. Her name is Sarah McCrum. She wrote this great book called Love Money, Money Loves You, and it was very helpful. And she has been really helping me in creating a sales process that is really simple and enjoyable, and just finding more ways to make those things that are harder more enjoyable for me. Once I started really enjoying the sales, I started really gaining a lot more clients. And it's funny, like there are months, and I've been doing this for probably 6 months, this specific program where I'm doing the sales calls and like really offering the framework in this coaching program instead of having clients here or there, like really doing it. I think I have about 15 clients now, and 7 of them have had their babies, and every single one has had a beautiful, really positive birth experience, which is so great. And what I was saying, though, actually, I'll go back a little bit. I wanted to share, I've been doing this for 6 months. In October, I had everyone say no, and I probably did. Right, like, I don't know, 25 calls, and every single person said no. And it was like, the rejection, like
Mm.
it triggered me so much. And I wanted to like almost go in and make my birth course not free anymore. Like if everyone just wants to take the free birth class and doesn't want to work with me, I'm just gonna not make it free. And that's actually not how I want to serve. When I check in with my soul just keeps saying, give more, like keep giving more value, and you will attract the people that want to work with you. So, what I'm experimenting with, and I am finding success with it, and I am profitable now. And of course, I haven't like scaled it up to the point where I'm really at the financial flow that I'm wanting for my family, but it's sustainable and it's going well. Um, the model that I'm trying to do is to just give and give, 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 give as much value as possible. So I'm making everything free. I'm not holding anything back. And there's nothing wrong with wanting people to pay money for the work that you've done, right? And the way that I'm approaching it is to just build a lot of trust by offering everyone, everything for free. and to help guide the way to support moms in recognizing that they can get all this information for free and it's helpful, but getting personalized support where you have a woman who is like compassionately and lovingly tailoring everything to you, walking you through this whole journey as a friend, as someone who can be a mirror to you, reflecting the truth to you that your body was made to do this and you don't need anything outside of yourself, in order to give birth. And that is so valuable. And that really does bridge the gap, right, that we have in the medical model where there isn't that like friend sister who's like a professional and experienced and can like hold your hand and lovingly guide you through both pregnancy and postpartum. And it is harder for me I have to like really up my sales skills to be able to really help people see this. And that has been more uncomfortable, but I am committed to that way because that's the way that I feel like my soul is really wanting to give and to offer. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. When I'm listening to you, first I have so much I want to like share about everything you just shared. Um, the first with your online course and how it wasn't soul aligned for you. And you know what? I don't think for any birth worker, having just like a passive online course is the right thing. I don't think for anyone, like, because we are women of service, like, we are people, right? We want to serve people, we want to have this connection, and that's how we like how the energy flows, right? Like this kind of loop, right? So I so understand that. Um, how I started online was with the natural birth course, and I still offer that as well as the nursing postpartum course and my village, my online community. And that's always been a side thing for me. It's never been my main thing, but it's always been there, and it goes ebbs and flows how much I sell of it, and it keeps on selling. It's a great thing to have as a passive thing that happens, without me having to really promote it. Um, because of the know, like, and trusts, people will buy it as they are pregnant and they know me or whatever, right? Or they've listened to the podcast or fill in the blank. Um, but I also in that have the community. So yes, even though it's like a passive course, because I had the community, we had that we could like chat online in the community. I held monthly circles so that we could see each other. They could come and speak to me if they wanted to. Now I have a beautiful other midwife who's actually holding that space, and I'm in the community, but I'm not really holding as much in this because I don't have time. I have too much things. And that's what I'm hearing that you did. You realized that you needed the kind of person to person. I'm hearing it's both online and in your community. Is that correct? That you're doing the online program for like people who are not in your community as well?
Yeah, so for people who are in my community is free and all my courses are there. And then there's like live trainings every Friday that people can come to. But if they wanted to join my like group calls or the one-on-one, then they would pay for that.
Yeah, no, I meant like that it's online. It's not
Oh,
like
it's online.
community, like local.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Sorry. Yeah,
So
it's online.
yeah, that's what I was getting at because that's the thing, isn't it? Like that's how you can still work online and you have a scalable business that's not just local. Like you can do in-person work, like I'm sure you still do, taking on birth clients, like being in the birth world, and you can do this online program, like where you can also have this interaction when you do feel connected. And this it's very interesting because when COVID hit in 2020, that's when I launched my natural birth course, and that's when I started going online. I also had clients online, I had groups online then. And in the beginning, I was very resistant because I was having all these circles in my community. And then we couldn't see each other because we weren't quote unquote allowed. And in the beginning, we didn't know what's going on. So I went online with them and had Zooms with the whole group. That was my first experience of doing that. That COVID really helped me be online more because I had massive resistance. I like, no, you can't be online. You don't feel connected. You can't be sharing vulnerable things online and feel connected to your sisters. And it's so not true. It's actually, you can, it's different. And I don't think anything will beat the physical like touch, like hugging someone and holding hands and like dancing together, being in a circle with women, for example. But actually, the online space also holds value and it's a beautiful, intimate space. What I wanted to say though was that, so it really sounds like you found your kind of high ticket offer in a sense, right? You had a low ticket that then became your free kind of lead magnet that now leads people into your high ticket, which is amazing. I love that for you, which is also what I have as well as the online course. So you can have like all these different levels of how you can work, and all of what you spoke about is something that I so resonate with. I've taken, I think, three or four different business trainings and courses throughout the last 5 years and invested probably, I don't know, 20K or more in that to learn because it doesn't come natural, I think, to any birth worker to be a businesswoman. It's not something we wake up and just like, oh yeah, we know this. No, like you have to learn the skills of selling and that, of marketing, of putting yourself out there, of finding your unique voice and unique way, that which is your soul aligned way. And I love that that's how you've navigated it and found that for you. I have as well. Thank goodness. Like, what a blessing to have found that, right? Because you never work another day in your life when you're doing what your soul is calling you to do, right? And that's something that when I've done these different courses, though, all of them have been quite masculine and quite like um
Yes.
very much just designed out from still from the men and how they show up every day. And so for me, it was very important when I created my mentorship. After that, I felt like I wanted to help my birth workers, my mentees, to have thriving birth businesses. But I wanted them to learn how to create a business from being a woman, having a cyclic being. Like how can you plan your work according to your cycle every month, according to the wheel of the year, the seasons, you know? How can you infuse your femininity, your feminine energy into being, held in your business, not that you just like showing up and hustling and grinding, like kind of all those, we're kind of talking about, or showing up like the sun. And so that's what I infused with my business course for birth workers. It's like the foundation is lots of inner work, like that mindset, and really, looking within with the sales call. It's about that. If you're feeling resistance, it's really because you don't believe truly that you haven't aligned with that. Actually, selling is of service. Like I'm offering you a service. This is being of service. It's a sacred thing, rewiring these really deep patterns of believing that selling is something sleazy. The salesperson coming to your door knocking, selling the vacuum cleaner that we all kind of think about, right? Or something. No, it's like it's actually you're being of service and reminding yourself. I've had to do that for years, reminding myself that when I put myself out there on social media or like this, like sharing here on this podcast or wherever, coming as a guest like you are, that when I feel resistance or like, oh God, I don't want to show up, or that's, I feel awkward or whatever, fill in the blank, that my desire to be of service is greater than my fear of rejection or judgment. Because that's where it comes down to, like our imposter syndrome, our fear of being shunned, judged, not liked, right? That is the deepest kind of core wounding that I think all humans carry. We're so scared of being like, rejected from the tribe, right? Like the deep beliefs. And like, and anchor into something bigger. Like my soul wants to be of service. Like that is one of my highest desires. And I think it's for you too. And I think it's for all birth workers. Like we want to be of service. We have great hearts. We want to give everything. We would like to do it all for free. And maybe in a barter society, we would have been given a pig and some chickens. And like, we we would, you know what I mean? But now money is the means of how we barter.
Yeah.
And it's secret. It's just energy.
Mm. Mhm. That's beautiful. Yeah, so very true. I remember in the coaching program that I'm in, I said, like, I'm really afraid of asking for the high ticket, and telling them the price. And Sarah said, well, it's kind of selfish.
Yes.
I was like, wow, you're right. To like withhold. Well, she said, like, do you believe that what it is that you offer is going to be like so supportive to these people? And I was like, of course. And she said, well, it's selfish, isn't it, to, withhold, offering this to others because of your own fear of rejection or whatever it is. And
Yeah.
oh yeah, you're right. And the worst that anyone can say is no. But once you, share it enough, some people are going to say yes. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
it
and that's beautiful. Like what you said about like everything that you said. I want to take your course. And I'm like, wow. The like yeah, I just experienced the same thing. It's all men, I feel like out there. There's just a lot of men that are teaching these in these programs. And I'm also like in taking some courses and getting some sales support all from men, and they're pretty aligned, which is great. But it's still like a completely different approach. No one is teaching me how to work in alignment with my cycle or to like bring my feminine nature into like the way that I do things and I do my work. My husband and I are already kind of aware of that. And we orient our lives a little bit. We do some shifts around my cycles, but there isn't anything like really deep happening there. And having someone who can guide you through it, like what I like to say is like if you invest a little bit in someone who can like jump you way ahead, you're actually going to save so much money and time long term because you don't have to figure things out yourself. Um,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
100%, instead of and I feel for you with the with the meta ads. I feel like beep that shit. I truly and like instead of putting money towards those that which doesn't work for small businesses, I really don't think it does, especially not in if you're in birth work, like it's quote unquote healthcare, which you know, it's different maybe if it's another business, but it's put that towards self-development, put that towards actually a mentor, put that towards a business course that you feel aligned with. Just like you said, that like just a few skills. I paid 5K for a my last training I paid for uh like a year ago, 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago, something like that. I learned nothing new. It was a very expensive lesson. I didn't learn anything new. It was kind of the same thing all over again. And also, again, it was a woman, but it was very masculine, all the things. But there was one thing she said, just this little thing that was worth 5,000.
What
You
was it?
well, it was this, and self-sabotage here. I don't do it all the time, but I did do it for that month. She said it was a side thing. It wasn't any even part of the teachings. It was one of the live calls I attended, and she talked, and she said something about, um, when you get new followers on social media. Like send them a thank you message. Connect and say, "Hi, how are you? So lovely that you connected with me. How can I serve you?" I did that for like not even a month. I did that for probably a week. And I landed so many big things. I went on big podcasts. I went on like a huge YouTube channel. I got so many more clients from that like 1 week of doing that.
Wow.
Yes, that one little thing. All the other things, nothing of that. And there was AI stuff, and there was so many technical shit. And I was like nothing of that resonated with me. But that, the connection with human beings, that. And
Mm,
I think that's the feminine way. We are
mm,
connectors. We're social. It's all about relationships for us, much more, I think, so than the men, like us as women.
mm.
And yeah, that's a great tip. If anyone's listening, that was a great tip. And it was worth 5,000. I paid for that and I got that back. That week I got that back. I earned
Uh-huh.
5,000 that week
Uh-huh.
from that tip.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that's again, that's like intimidating. And also why probably I haven't continued doing it and I don't have the time. With connecting with everyone it comes to follow. But when I do that, things happen. Things does happen. And
Mhm.
yeah. And so that's something I want to say too, is that to be open to that, the smallest little thing can like really move the needle.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, it really can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
wrapping things up, I really like one thing that you said repeatedly that I repeat also constantly is that having your own birth business as a birth worker, I mean, being self-employed, period, whatever work you do, is the biggest self-development journey you'll ever do. Many people think that if I'm just a good enough birth worker, if I have happy clients, word of mouth will spread and I will do well. And yes, Absolutely. Of course, word of mouth is really important. And yes, if you live in a community that has enough people that will birth, maybe that can sustain you, right? And if you want to be 100% in the birth portal, brilliant. But that only takes you so far. And it might also not really take you that far, right? Like to realize that you actually also need to be seen in your community, whether that is online or in real life, to attract your soul aligned clients. You can't hide. You can't just sit in your little cottage in the forest like I'm doing and and think that people will find you. You need to be daring, bold, and courageous and show your heart and show yourself. Dare to show up in the different ways that is working for you. I mean, for some, that's social media, for some, that's podcast, YouTube, flyers at your health food shop, webinars, or actual circles in your community. There's so many different ways of showing up and showing yourself, but you kind of have to if you want to have a business and not just have a hobby, right?
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, that is the hardest part I found is yeah, learning how to show up for
Mm.
myself and overcome some of those blocks. And instead of like, when I have a block come up, like, oh, I don't really want to like put myself out there, for me to just see that that's just another part of me that is ready to grow and just needs to be loved by me. And as I learn to love that part of myself and, relax into the block instead of like resist it and be like, oh, I can just recognize like this is just a part of me that is growing. And we usually feel it as the energy is clearing and as the growth happens. So I'll just like relax into my resistance or whatever it is. And it usually clears so much faster that way when I choose to just relax into it and love myself. Yeah. Oh, this was a beautiful conversation. Thanks so much for sharing it with me and for creating this podcast. I hope it really helps a lot of women in their work.
I really, really think it will. I think this was beautiful. Your story was beautiful. Because if there's something that's true, is that us as women of service in birth work, we need all the help we can to realize that we are amazing and that we are worthy of, receiving through that work, and that we're not meant to struggle. We're meant to thrive in doing our soul's work. So let's allow the abundance in, like allow the reciprocity.
Reciprocity.
And just, allow spirit in, because I truly believe also when we are serving from our heart and our soul, there is that abundance that wants to support us in that. I truly believe that. And I do believe when we don't receive it, it's internal blockages that actually are we are self-sabotaging on one level or another. Like we're not showing up, we're not doing we're not doing what moves the needle. We're hiding and doing emails or, doing the things that are, not that confronting, instead of, like you said, going on that sales call to serve someone, right?
Yeah.
I think that we are the biggest self-sabotagers. So I'm so happy you wanted to come and share so honestly and vulnerably, and I'm so I'm so happy you found your thing. Like when that happens, there's nothing better. When life happened to me and I was asked to create this sacred birthworker mentorship, everything came together. That's my high ticket. That's my offering that just fills me up and that feels so soul aligned. I'm doing everything in there that, you know, it's the best thing in the world. I don't feel like I'm working with that.
Mm.
So I'm so glad you found that for you.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yay. Blessings on your work. Thank you so much for having me. This was a really beautiful conversation.
Thank you for listening. If you love this podcast, then please share the love on your podcast app by leaving a comment or pop over to our Instagram at Sacred Birth International. I'd love to connect there. If you'd like to know more about the Sacred Birthworker Mentorship or the business course for birth workers, then head on over to sacredbirthinternational.com to learn more. Thank you for listening.